Welcome to another installment of Friday Q&A. I hope you're all fantastic, and I hope you've all had a fantastic week. To everybody who submitted a question for this week's Q&A, I thank you all. I'll do my best to get to all of them. And if you have a question you would like me to answer on next week's video, simply put it in the comments section below. If you like what I do here on YouTube and you want to support the channel, you can check the video description to support the channel in a variety of ways, whether it's supporting me directly on Patreon, buying some of the music that I make with Ragdoll, following any of the affiliate links. You can also come and join the Discord server and hang out and get some free stuff like some free impulse responses. Anyway, let's get into this week's questions. Why is there so much E-flat tuning in 80s rock? This is something that didn't seem weird to me when I got into this particular style of music. As a kid growing up, I listened to heaps of Stevie Ray Vaughan, so it's all tuned down a half step. And it was initially kind of pitched to me by the people I was around when I started playing guitar that, E-flat's a good idea on a Strat because it makes it a little bit easier to play. A Strat's got a longer scale length. You just kind of tune down a bit and you can bend and you can do a bunch of stuff easier. So I imagine there's actually probably some kind of concrete history here when it comes to E-flat tuning on guitar. It probably has to do with the fact that you can tune a guitar so much easier than you can change the tuning on something like a brass instrument. Anything with horns, playing in like A minor is going to be a bit of a pain, but if you want to play in B flat minor, just play in B minor on guitar, but tune your guitar down a half step and all the horn players will be really happy. I imagine there's that. I imagine there's also the Hendrix factor. Obviously, as Hendrix was developing as a musician, played in a lot of these kind of R&B and soul bands. So you're playing with horns. That's probably where he picked it up. And then, Jimi Hendrix kind of became a little bit of a big deal, didn't he, at some point? So then the E-flat tuning thing really got mainstreamed into guitar culture. That's a guess anyway. Like I said, I'm not a tuning historian or anything like that. So I imagine it's that. I also imagine it's the fact that, with the 80s anyway, it seemed to be like bigger and better. So if you can sing higher, that's obviously a better thing. And, if the guitars are tuned down a little bit lower, then you kind of don't have to work as hard as a singer. So I guess what I'm saying is, in this case, don't blame the bass player or the drummer, blame the singers and blame the horn players. Maybe don't blame them because it's actually pretty cool. E-flat tuning sounds awesome. So does tuning down a whole step. So does tuning down to like drop A or something like that. It's kind of awesome that, it's, for guitar anyway, not a weird thing to just change your tuning. They're not so like locked into a particular standard tuning. I'd even argue that standard tuning isn't the best name for it anyway. That's a hell of a first question anyway. What advice would I give to somebody who is looking to kind of retool their technique and maybe unlearn some bad habits and learn some new good habits on the instrument? Such a tricky one. Again, in the same way, I'm not a tuning historian, I'm not like a behavioral psychologist or anything like that. Maybe this is something you should pay for a session, actually go and see a psych and say, hey, is this even possible past a certain age? But I would imagine it's just going to come down to two things. You don't want to practice doing the thing you don't want to do, and you want to practice the thing you want to do. And that sounds really, really straightforward, but the idea would be, for example, I don't know, let's say you wanted to get really good at alternate picking and like downward pick slanting. So you watch a bunch of Troy Grady stuff and you start filming yourself every single practice session. And after the practice session, you actually have some time to watch back what you did and evaluate it. I think you need that sort of feedback, or find yourself a really good guitar teacher who can give you some good exercises and then who can kind of enforce them, not in like a kind of strict, you have to do this, or, you never be good at guitar, but more a kind of good, encouraging environment there. And, one of the nice things to come out of the fact that, a lot of the world was locked down for the last 2 years is it's really easy to basically book a lesson with anybody, anywhere, thanks to like video conferencing technology. And, you can go up and look up a whole bunch of top players and basically just hit them up and say, hey, I want a lesson, show me what you do. So if you have your favorite guitar player, in the world, try to find their details and reach out to them and see what a lesson's going to cost. And, if it's a one-off thing and, maybe it's, I don't know, something like $200, that's way more than what I would charge for a particular lesson, but I imagine if you're an actual expert at what you're doing, it might be worth it for a one-off thing where someone can just say, hey, I can see exactly what you're trying to do. this is the way you're going about it, so don't do that, work on this stuff. A lot of stuff in there. Let me know what you all think anyway. Like, has anybody been through this? I've certainly been through this as a player where I have had habits. I won't call them bad habits. I'm going to say habits that I did not want in my playing, that I had to spend a lot of time actually telling myself, don't do that, and actively practicing not doing it while practicing the thing that I wanted to do, whether it's like rhythm guitar playing. I went through a phase where I really worked on my down picking, and whether it's stuff like alternate picking. I even remember after I've been playing guitar for about 18 months, I'd just strictly been doing economy picking to play scales. And then I watched Paul Gilbert and I wanted to alternate pick. And that was really difficult to bust out of that habit. So yeah, in the comments section, let's hear some advice. I put up a video last week of Ragdoll playing Foot to the Floor from our very first US tour 10 years ago. Crazy to think that it's a decade since the first time I went to the States. But a few people wanted to know what my rig was there. And you can see like a PV6505, one of those 1x12 combos. That was my US tour rig until I got an Axe-Fx, and that little amp was awesome. Did lots and lots of gigs on it, like probably 70 or 80 gigs on it. And, you know, it had a few little issues here and there, but at the end of the day, it was a bit of a trooper. I think in that video, I had a Dunlop wah, just the stock Crybaby, and a full-tone OCD as a boost. And that was the rig. The next year, I added an Eventide time factor and an Ernie Ball volume pedal to that particular rig. That was my first kind of proper, you know, setup. Then I had a way huge swollen pickle for some sections, just for filthy fuzz. And I'd go between the way huge green Rhino. I picked up one of those really cheap, and a Boss SD1 or the OCD. So that was kind of my rig until I got an Axe-Fx Ultra, and that just totally changed my world with gigging. This one comes from friend of the channel, Roger Lamson at Rubato Guitars. My thoughts on the effect string action has on not only playability, I think it's fairly obvious the effect that it has on playability, but like the way it makes you play and how a particular action setup might be better suited to particular styles. It's a really good question, and it did make me think what I like about the way my guitars are set up and what they're good for. They're obviously very good for the way I try to play guitar, but the big one obviously would be slide playing. I would definitely play with a higher action if I was doing a lot more slide. I think if I was doing a kind of more like rhythm guitar focused gig, I would probably move up. Like if I didn't have to play solos, I would put like a set of 14 to 60s on my guitar and raise the action up and make sure it was intoned and just kind of slug away on that, purely for the fact that I like playing acoustic guitar with like heavy hands and that feeling of really playing percussively. But you know, I like to make weird guitar faces and do guitar solos, so I like a kind of lower action. And actually, when I started out playing, you know, I read the mythology about Stevie Ray's setup with a really high action, and I remember raising the action on my guitar and showing it to my dad and saying, hey, I read this thing that, you know, Stevie Ray Vaughan apparently had a really high action, and he looked at me like I was insane because I'd raised the action to about an inch off the fretboard. It was like a, you know, lap steel guitar action or something like that, and I was trying to play licks, and he kind of said, yeah, I don't think it was quite that high. I remember reading something about Yngwie saying when he's on tour, he raises the action up higher and higher as well. But for me, I generally just kind of like a low action. I play with so much gain and so many time-based effects that, you know, as long as it's not fretting out and as long as I can actually make the note sound out, I'm going to be pretty happy with it. How would I approach a kind of hired gun style gig if you're playing covers? So you've just joined a band that's already established, you're the new member of the band. How do you go about learning the set, and how do you go about kind of integrating with the project? Like, do you just kind of take a back seat and shut up and do what you're told? Or do you try to get involved in the, I guess, the kind of everyday today stuff with like booking gigs and the sort of gigs you want to play and learning songs? I'm one of those people where I think it's just kind of in my nature where I want to get involved. I want to help in some way. If I've joined a band and, you know, they're doing a particular sort of cover set, I'm probably immediately going to say, hey, it would be awesome to play this song or this song. But I would give it a little bit of time, you know, for the people to just kind of get used to playing with me and me playing with them. And I think you can see it as kind of liberating if you are one of those people that's always involved where, hey, I just have to show up to the gig. I just have to have a good time. And I find that, you know, the projects that I'm involved in that I've really kind of got my heart and soul in, like Ragdoll, for example, is doing a gig isn't just doing a gig. It's, you know, making sure all the other stuff around it is ready to go. You know, it's making sure, you know, there's rehearsals and there's merch. And if we're on tour, it's all the logistical stuff around that. And we all chip in with that and we're all like involved at the same level. So there's no, oh, I thought we were going to do this. No, I said we were going to do this. And it just kind of helps to ease conflict when everyone's pulling in the same direction. But I think for a cover band, a lot of the time, as long as one person knows what's going on, you can just kind of free yourself up and show up to the gig, set up your gear, pull a guitar sound that you like, and go out and just have a good time and kind of enjoy a less stressful gig experience maybe. Have I checked out the Eventide Misha sequencer, the kind of step sequencer? I thought when I first saw that, I will admit, I thought it was going to be some kind of like Misha Mansour signature Eventide delay. So I was kind of interested, and then I saw it was essentially a Eurorack thing, and I've been doing my best not to go down the Eurorack rabbit hole. So I actually didn't check it out for maybe a week, and then I listened to it and I heard some beautiful music being made with it, and yeah, it's pretty darn cool. The whole modular world is an amazing place. And for anybody out there who likes really cool out there guitar sounds, search modular synthesis on YouTube and just go for a ride. You know, whether you just check out stuff where it's like, hey, here's a weird little suitcase thing that I made, or whether it's like the Moog Mother style stuff, or whether it's stuff like all the mutable instrument stuff. I've got the Poly Bebo, which has a lot of those mutable modules in it. So it's like a little pedal that does a modular synth thing, kind of like synth Inception or something like that. So that kind of scratches my itch, but I haven't gone full modular yet. But if anybody wants to see any more kind of modular stuff from the Bebo or anything else, I'm totally open to it. Do I like tweed amps? Kind of. I like the typical tweed thing, which to me is, you know, Neil Young, Cinnamon Girl, that kind of sound where it sounds like the amp is just dying and you've got all this blocking distortion and kind of you get this squeezy infinite sustain. But I actually just kind of like the lower gain tweed stuff. And what did I play and when was that? Shout out to a friend of the channel, Johnny C from Anarchy Audio, because the last time I hung out with Johnny and they modded my ADA MP1 for me, there was a little kind of, what is it, the 5F3, or is it something like that, whatever like the little tweed circuit is. And I was just playing on that with this like $100 Ibanez guitar, and it sounded amazing. And I really liked the kind of touch responsiveness. So it's not a real world amp I have in physical form, but you know, I've got stuff like the Axe FX, even like the Universal Apollo. There's a really good tweed simulation plugin that you can run as Unison in there that I really like the sound of. So yeah, any tweed amp fans out there, let me know about your favorite tweed tone. Have I ever checked out Sweet Savage? Of course I've checked out Sweet Savage because I love Vivian Campbell's playing, and you know, reading about Vivian playing with Dio, you always hear that he was in this band called Sweet Savage, and thanks to the internet, it's really easy to go and check that stuff out. If you haven't checked out Sweet Savage with Vivian Campbell, go and check out a young Viv Campbell just absolutely melting faces. You know, it's one of those things when you go and listen to those tapes of like young Yngwie, you can hear they're already Yngwie Malmsteen. You can hear that with Vivian Campbell, like such a young age, such a just developed sound. It's pretty raw, but there is that kind of beauty. I love Viv on the first two Dio albums because he's still got that kind of fire, and you hear so much of that with the Sweet Savage records. When am I coming to the USA next? I don't know for certain. I would love to. I'm so excited to come back and just do things that you do in America, whether it's, you know, check out guitars, whether it's go and eat all the amazing foods that will kill you faster than anything else on earth, whether it's just hanging out with people at shows. I've had so many great times on tour in the States. I have family in the States, of course, and I'm really looking forward to coming back. And believe me, when I do come back, you will all hear about it for weeks and months in advance. I'll totally be shilling it, and I'll have to do some kind of like catch up, hangout, meetup event outside of whatever I'm doing there. That's it for this week's questions. Again, if you have a question for next week's Q&A, put it in the comment section below. I hope you all have a fantastic weekend wherever you are in the world. Take it easy, and I'll see you all next time. Cheers.